badasses.
Ecto Radio.
Nothing in his path was safe. Not the planes in the sky. Not the ships at sea. Not the men. Nor the vehicles on the ground.
Ecto Radio. The ghost hunting badasses.
It's time to kick ass and chew bubble gum. And I'm all out of gum.
Only on the Supernatural Radio Network. Beer-fueled, whiskey-filtered paranormal radio.
And welcome to Ecto Radio. I am the Hitman.
I am Racer.
And I am Wild Wendy.
Dead Bastard ain't here.
Nope.
Had problems. Something to do with wearing women's underwear.
No.
Check his Facebook status and you'll find out more, from what I understand.
Do we really want to know more?
I don't know.
I don't know.
Anyway, yeah.
Yep.
So, got a lot on the program tonight. For one thing, we're going to be kind of addressing this show to all paranormal investigators because of a thread that I read on Facebook and decided that we would respond to. On the Horror Hour, reviewing Diary of the Dead, the Romero flop.
Yep.
And then, we'll see what happens on the Apocalypse, too. Also, tonight, we have the Ecto Radio premiere of Artistic License by Dead of Politics. So you'll get to see the official video from our friends in Texas. So,
Our fiends. From our fiends.
okay, so what we're going to do here, is there anything else in general that we got to go over? There's an empty spot. Something was supposed to happen at this point. Oh, on the 25th of February.
The 25th of February.
13th Dimension, if you're here locally in Albuquerque, come by and check it out. It's going to be pretty bitchin', the prologue. So this will be the first of several. And each one's going to be themed a little different from what I understand.
Yep. This one is a sci-fi horror themed. We teamed up with Albuquerque Comic-Con and a bunch of other sponsors to help determine the 2012 Comic-Con Charity of the Year. So it's all going to a good cause.
And, yes.
Lots of live performances, some badass drink specials if you're a drinker.
Yeah, we got the glowing drinks officially. We got the little light stick thingies that go in there now.
Yep.
So
It's going to be awesome.
yeah, it's going to be very cool. So if you're local, check it out. And if you're cruising around, you have to be in the area, check it out. Whatever. And we'll post information on the following ones as soon as we get them.
Yep. So check out Ecto Radio SRN on Facebook or go to facebook.com/the13th dimension.
So, yes. And we might even have video of that on the show.
Yeah.
There's going to be a guy there videoing it, so you'll get... If you miss it, don't feel too bad. I mean, if you're, far away, we'll put some video up and show you what you missed. But, yeah. Okay, so here we go. So this is from... Let me see if we get her name right. Valerie Phillip Roberts posted this on Facebook, and it was addressed to all paranormal investigators. So what we decided to do, rather than just reading her whole spiel, I figured it'd be easier to kind of go by, paragraph-ish, and then...
Throw in our...
Because I said there was a
2 cents.
I agree. Some of it is good points, and some of it I disagree with, so we'll kind of do it by paragraph. And then I got some of the comments that people have posted. I want to add my spiel to that, too. So...
All right, so it goes on. It starts out by saying, I've been seeing a lot of things on my wall lately that have me questioning the true goals of some of the paranormal investigators out there. I am friends with many investigators around the world, and I can tell you that some of the latest upsets, in my opinion, are totally uncalled for. Paranormal investigating is not about every investigation team following the same rules or investigating the same way. It is supposed to be about a mutual goal. When ghost hunting starts turning into a soap opera, there's something bad wrong. Who cares if one person doesn't like the way another person investigates, what protocol they follow, which tools or aids they use, how they appear on a TV show, or how they handle their life appearances? Apparently the fans don't mind. They still watch and attend without complaint. Those who do complain and gripe about it most likely just need to have something to complain and gripe about anyway.
Okay. What's your spiel? I'll let you, because you had something about that you were talking about earlier.
My biggest thing was when they start out by saying teams that don't follow the same rules or investigate in the same way, it's about a mutual goal. There's really no way to come to a mutual goal if you're not using a scientific method, in my opinion. This is basically saying, hey, if you use dowsing rods, if you use a Ouija board, you're going to come to the same conclusion as somebody who's going with a scientific method approach.
But that's one of the big gripes. Let me see what else is in here because I don't want to jump over myself. Well, let's see. As far as that one goes, there is a protocol, and I think one of the big things that needs to be understood about ghost hunting is that it's not proving anything. In fact, our news tonight, I found a specific article I want to go over on when you do news because you got to look at how the public is starting to respond. Right. And I'm not talking about the ghost hunters. I'm talking about the public in general and how they're responding to the stuff they've been bombarded with. And it's kind of a good indication of that. I might jump it, but we'll see. There's something I got to say about it. Protocols. There was also a comment to this that was talking about there's no set way that ghost hunters are supposed to do things. What I think it's important to point out is that most of the stuff that ghost hunters do is kind of BS.
Right.
Yeah, I did have something here.
He had something.
Something?
I want to know what it is.
Me too.
I had to put this up. Shameless self-promotion, but I needed to put it up. What ghost hunters do is so messed up to begin with. I just didn't write an article about it. I wrote a book about it. And if you're a really big believer in the ghost hunting methods, you're going to have a problem with the first several chapters. And it's kind of a long process, but the bottom line is there is a specific way to do this if you're really interested in using, a scientific method. I mean, ghosts haven't been proven to exist yet. And if you're a paranormal investigator or a ghost hunter or a paranormal researcher, regardless of what you want to call yourself, we kind of need to do that first before we move on to different methods and investigating homes and all that kind of crap. Mm-hmm. One of the things about when I wrote this book was really to let the public see that what most ghost hunters do, it really is bullshit. It's a lot of it is built upon someone had an idea and it got put out there into the community and then it's never followed up on. Even when that person came to a result and said, okay, well, I was wrong about this and I've moved on, that belief is still in there. For example, EMF meters, people still accept that this should be something paranormal investigators use, even though the groups that have been using them have pretty much moved on, at least the experienced groups. Scientific method is very specific as far as what it requires, and it's the way to investigate the world. And it's a lot more complicated than, come up with a hypothesis and then, you're taking a guess. I mean, it talks about controls, different kind of standards. For example, when you're measuring something, you have to measure it the exact same way each time. Otherwise, your data is skewed. Things like that. So I'll get rid of that. But I did write the book, but I didn't stop there. I just didn't bitch for several chapters. I actually went through and put legitimate scientific methods to research things.
Right.
And one of the big things in there is, all this equipment that ghost hunters use, none of it has been ever proven to detect paranormal stuff.
Right.
So if you're looking at Group A over here with $30,000 worth of equipment and thermal imagers, and Group B, which has a notebook, a pencil, a few simple tools, one is no better than another in that sense because this $30,000 worth of stuff, none of it has been proven to detect paranormal yet. It really depends upon the method. And I think that's one of the things that the groups need to do. You need to, if you're going to actually do this and you're serious about it, denote what kind of method you're using. Are you using a controlled experiment? Are you doing research based upon things like gathering results and trending various sets of data? It could be about witnesses, about things that are common in locations, things like that, those kind of things.
I have a question for you.
What?
But wouldn't it kind of be... What?
Ugh.
Isn't it kind of a double-edged sword, though? Like how you said, you have a group that has $30,000 worth of equipment and some that has some simple tools like a notebook and a pencil. I mean, would you clarify, though, like on the groups that have the simpler tools that, you can't prove the paranormal with the paranormal, meaning the groups that use dowsing rods, Ouija boards, psychics. I mean, would that fall into a different type of category?
No, it's still against science.
Right.
Because you can't prove the paranormal with the paranormal to begin with. But if you're going into science, what science tells you, for example, if you research a lot of your requirements for accuracy, depending upon your instrumentation, things like that, you have a 5-degree margin of error. So that means your instrumentation that you're using, if you're expecting it to generate a honest result, it has to be at least 95% accurate. This is one of the reasons EMF meters fail. They're not that accurate. And a lot of times the manufacturers themselves, the way they word it will sound tricky. Like a K2, if you read it just straight off, its specs, it sounds like it's 98% accurate. It's actually not. It's 98% accurate at a certain frequency range, and then once you start getting out of that, which is capable of detecting things out of that range, it drops considerably. It's not a great meter. One of the reasons you can't use psychics, for example, your best psychics out there, the highest accuracy I ever heard one claim was 80% accurate. That's the highest I've ever heard, personally. Well, that still leaves you 20% chance of being wrong. It's not up to a scientific standard. You only allowed 5%. And so it doesn't matter if we believe in mediums or psychics or not. It's just the fact that they're not accurate is what knocks them out of scientific method. So let's keep going with the paragraphs, though, because I probably jumped over.
All right. If anyone investigated the same way using the same tools, nothing new would ever be learned. No information would be gained. There has been no differences. It's those differences in investigating that get it done and get answers.
Now, as far as the differences, there's a big, like we just mentioned how, as far as teams investigating different ways, there's kind of a pro and a con, or a yes and a no answer. One, we can't really relate to each other if our techniques and methods are too radically different.
Right.
A great example would be like the peer review we did on some team in Oklahoma a couple weeks back. Basically on no evidence and very, shall we say, sketchy EVP evidence, they were telling people they had demons in their homes. And when we did the Paranormal Unity show, that's why it's not going to happen. Your other teams aren't going to relate to those people. One of the big things about, like I said, a lot of the things that ghost hunters believe in. If you believe in residual energy, okay, for example, and you're thinking that's a viable hypothesis, okay, well, once you explain how it violates major laws of physics, that's why I'm always trying to talk about a scientific standard is so that the way that we are doing it is consistent. Now, we can be researching different types of instrumentation, to see if they work via a controlled experiment, or we can be testing different things, but the basis of what that is has to be determined. And, unfortunately, there's been a lot of attempts to unify groups. A lot. I mean, what was it called? The United States Paranormal Alliance. That was it. It was the last one that I thought, well, maybe these guys can do it. That fell apart. Every single one I've seen put together, they eventually fall apart. It starts out with drama. So, yeah. What's the next paragraph?
Instead of acting childish, feeling sorry for yourselves, and slinging mud at each other, you need to work together, compare evidence, compare tactics, and the tools or aids used when that evidence was found. But don't change your own way of doing things. I have to point out really quick, though, that when it says you need to work together, compare evidence, compare tactics, and the tools or aids that you use, right there, it's like putting certain groups in with a feeding frenzy. It's throwing people into sharks.
Well, here's my problem. Number one, stop using the word evidence. Please look up the definition of the word. When you're saying evidence and you understand what that means, Evidence means the burden of proof is fulfilled. That means if I say I have a photograph and I'm saying this is evidence, I'm saying this photograph will prove ghosts exist. This is where most of your groups have a problem. It's not a lot of times with the finding itself. It's the fact that you're calling it evidence and it's not. The other thing is when certain things come out, and for example, like the K2. If you've watched on YouTube, there are tons of videos about people, they've taken the K2 and they're activating a little radio, handheld radio, and they'll show this sets the K2 off. But you can take that further with your testing, and once you understand how that meter works, you could be inside a place, and we're sitting there, we're investigating with the K2, and all of a sudden a cop goes by and he's calling in, hey, my turn to get donuts there, buddy, meet you at the Circle K. Well, his radio signal will set your K2 off, but you don't know. You're inside a building.
Right. I have another question
and
for
so
you.
they bring that up, and then people, you're just attacking, my equipment. No, we've already identified there's flaws with the equipment. And people want to believe what they want to believe. There's still people using the K2 meter as a viable instrument, even though most of your serious paranormal investigators are saying there's problems with this. Too many things can set this off that are not paranormal. And, yeah.
Can I ask my other question?
Yeah.
Okay. Yes.
Yeah.
Ask your questions. But it's not just with K2, though. Isn't that true with EVP?
No, EVP is different because of Pratt. You'd be surprised. A lot of people don't know about Pratt. Probably the biggest revolutionary thing that's come about in the paranormal field. Mm-hmm. And so many people don't know about it. One of the reasons is this thing became a hobby. And it became a hobby... 2002 or so is when you really started seeing the influx of groups. 2005, it became ridiculous. You had the shows coming on TVs and thousands of people making groups because they want to have the next TV show or whatever. But yeah, that kind of it degraded, it watered everything down. So when progress is made and people put stuff out, like Pratt, no one's doing anything. In case you don't know, if you're watching the show for the first time, we've talked about Pratt before. One of the big things about Pratt is it's a voice analysis software, really. And what you're looking at is you're analyzing formants in a spectrogram of the voice itself, and you're looking for vowels to prove it's a voice. And one of the things that's been discovered is that things like plosions, things that are common to human speech, for example, breathing in before you say a word, that shows up on a spectrogram. Well, that's missing from EVP. Noises that are made from your nose or your tongue hitting your teeth, those aren't in there. Which, from a scientific perspective, is interesting because they're like, well, how in the hell did you make this voice? This person isn't breathing that made this. How did you make the recording? The problem is it requires you to learn how to read a spectrogram, which isn't easy. And the other problem is for the people that are faking it, this is a double-edged sword.
Yeah.
If you're faking it, man, Pratt shows you. This is a pair of vocal cords making this. It's not an EVP.
Right.
So, you got that too. So it's also all this influx and stuff. But the drama is interesting. In that book that I wrote, Hunting the Ghost Hunters, I started out with parapsychology, and a lot of people, even to this day, and I'm jumping ahead because I know there's comments about parapsychology, but parapsychology is screwed. It was screwed in the 70s because what they did is they weren't reporting their negative results, and then they formed into societies and started attacking each other. Whoa, this sounds familiar, doesn't it? It's not a new thing, folks. The parapsychologists were doing this crap in the 70s and 80s, and it tore parapsychology apart. One of the things that really tore it apart was that. So, yeah, the drama isn't limited to that. I think where the drama comes in is the people. It's coming in because it's become a hobby, and it's so dependent on people's belief systems, like believing that an EMF meter can detect a ghostly presence. They want to believe in that so much, and they're biased by their own belief system, that when someone tells them otherwise, they're taken back by it. They take it as a personal attack. And then you got some groups which think they know it all because they read a book or they attended a TAPS convention. And then they start going out and attacking other people, trying to make themselves look better, or, oh, what you're doing is insignificant, you know. So there's a lot of that happening, too. But, yeah. Used to, and we talked about this a couple weeks back, before all this big surge of paranormal groups, go back to the year 2000, okay? It was perfectly acceptable. You know, we were on an investigation down in Socorro, and we got some weird crap on video. I didn't know what the hell it was. So I burned a copy of it off on videotape, and I sent it off to Troy Taylor at the American Ghost Society, and I had Troy look, and Troy came back. You know, at first I thought it was dust, but man, this stuff, it vanishes mid-frame. It's moving upwards instead of down like in normal dust pattern. I don't know what it is. But that was common. We talked to each other. We would look at each other's evidence and go, you know, I think you're onto something there, or, hey, I think that's explainable. Here's what I think it is. But that happens nowadays. You're being a dick, and you're attacking people. That's the way science works. Check out what a peer review is in science.
Right. I have to point this out, too, in a chat, because somebody in the chat named Kits made a really good point. And Lynn kind of reiterated it in the chat. It says, just as Kit said, it's not what you prove, but what you disprove. It's not what is, but what isn't. And that's kind of a good point. It's not what you prove, but it's what you disprove. It's kind of like the deduction theory, I guess.
Well,
you know,
it's like I said, you know, the value of a paranormal investigator is your ability to recognize normal from paranormal.
Right.
And I even said it in my blog. I said I compared it. I no longer look at places as haunted and not haunted. I look at it as solved and unsolved. And the reason is, just because my team can go in there, or I can go in there personally, and I can't figure it out, doesn't mean it's haunted or even paranormal. It just means I've exhausted all of my resources, and I can't figure it out. It's not solved. You know what I mean? So...
And I think a mistake that a lot of investigators is you bring up a good point with that, is if, you know, I guess they refer to them as their lead investigators and whatnot, but, you know, they go in, and if they can't determine what it is, they label it as haunted.
Well, a lot of people do that. Yeah, exactly.
Hitman can't figure out what it is, it's haunted. And I think that's no bueno.
Yeah. But yes.
Continue on.
Yeah.
All right. Instead of trying to be like someone else or wanting someone else to be like you, you need to focus on what makes your team or investigation skills different from all of those other teams and investigators out there, and build on the common ground that is already there. One team is no better than another. Each team will have their own differences, and for that I am grateful. The paranormal world will be pretty damn boring if those of us who watch the many different ghost hunting shows had to watch each team investigate the exact same way. Yes, people are going to favor some shows over others. Big deal. Let it go and move on already. High school is over, kiddos. It's time to pull up your big girl panties and get over it. I wonder if that's where Dead Bastard got his panties.
Maybe, I don't know. But one of the things, and this was addressed in the comments, that the TV shows, that's not real ghost hunting. That's ghost hunting hobbyist at best.
It's called cha-ching.
Yeah, it's all about ratings and making a program entertaining. Now, as we already kind of mentioned, how since ghosts haven't been proven to exist, therefore none of the methods we're using really haven't proven they exist. Common sense, think about this. This isn't a new thing. We've been investigating ghosts since the 70s. Mm-hmm. Think about it. 30 years, 40 years, we haven't proven it yet? That's two options. Either they don't exist, or the methods that we're using don't work. It's one of the reasons why I wrote the book. We have to get over this hump of the hobby, which has been interjected really hardcore because of those TV shows, before we can go anywhere. But at the same time, there are teams that are better than other teams, and the reason I'm going to say that is experience. An experienced team, think about it. If you've done 500 ghost hunts, you've gained the experience of analyzing evidence 500 times. And just like anything in life, if you do something a lot, you start to get better at it, more proficient at it. And so obviously your more experienced teams are going to more critically evaluate evidence than a team that's 2 years old, for example. Okay? And in that case, you can learn from each other. But it turns into a pissing contest a lot of times. Unfortunately. But yeah, it's going to be part of the deal. Yeah, next one.
Do what you all do best. Investigate. Regardless of what you might think, you all have your own fan base, and you get it done and get results your own way. A great many of those fans are mutual fans, and none of those fans should be made to feel like they have to choose sides. You all do a great job. Forget what others think and keep doing what you're doing.
You know, one of the reasons we do peer reviews on Ecto Radio, and the peer review, by the way, if those who haven't seen the show yet, is where we take a team, and we do play good cop, bad cop. I'll say, this is what I like about this team, and this is what I don't like about the team.
Mm-hmm.
But part of it has been to educate the teams, because I've been doing this crap a long damn time, written a lot of books about it, and I've learned a lot. And I'm not afraid to go to the scientific community and go, hey, is this right or is this wrong? And if they say that's wrong, okay, well, I want to put that information out there. I think it's a big problem where saying everybody just do their own thing doesn't work. We all need to be working within a similar fashion, which is scientific method. Like I said, you can pick a lot of different ones. Website that we have, sgha.net, we use a controlled experiment, so to speak. And where we're using a positive control, negative control, we use probability theory to determine our positive control, and then our negative control are places that I know are not haunted, but we create the story, and the investigators are under blind standard. They don't know if they're going into a place that's haunted or a place that's not haunted, and we just measure. That's how you learn, because the whole point is we don't know what paranormal is yet. Nobody does. And that's really the challenge of ghost hunters. We need to find that one thing that is measurable, then we can say this is definitely measuring something paranormal. In the controlled experiment, the way it works is, use the dowsing rod since you brought them up. We'll go into a supposed haunted place. We use probability theory, saying, well, if this haunted crap exists, this is definitely one of them. And we'll just count how many times the rods cross. And then we would take the team into a non-haunted place and count how many times the rods cross. The reason we don't tell the team what's going on, prevent bias. They don't know. And you get an honest result. And the problem there, when we did that test, is they crossed about the same amount of times in both places, meaning there's no difference between paranormal and normal, meaning they don't work. So we can now say they don't work. Now, if you disagree with us, that's why I put everything on there, how we determine, if a place is a positive control, how we use probability theory, exactly. I even have a chart there so you can actually take your own places and go in and analyze it and see how they would rank. And, go out and repeat the test. Buy a pair of dowsing rods and go out and repeat the test yourself. That's the way it would work scientifically. Repeat the experiment.
Mm-hmm.
I
like what this one had to say when we're ready.
Oh, okay, keep going.
All right, this was a comment from somebody on here. Her name was Kathleen Tedson. And I do kind of agree with what she's saying here. While I certainly agree about much of what you're saying, DB, not dead bastard.
Yeah.
I do disagree on one point. Some investigative teams are better than others. I'm not a member of a team, but an author who has worked with many paranormal teams. While all investigation styles are good, their analytical approach at evidence determination is not, and that makes them different. Please, no more obvious dust orbs as evidence. No more matrix photos of signs of ghosts, or reflected lights as a validation of ghostly images. And no more EVPs that are actually members in the team whispering. Some groups make an obvious effort at learning, and others just continue propagating old, outdated myths. For quote-unquote ghost hunting, ever to be looked at by the scientific community as anything other than a silly distraction, the evidence of hauntings must be much more objectively presented.
Yeah. And I agree with that.
Yeah, I do too.
But see, it's like I was saying, a reason a lot of the teams continue doing the old same crap is because, well, that's what they've seen on TV, therefore, that must be right. Or they've read one of the crappy ghost hunting books out there that also promote this, and they keep going on. For those of you who don't know, EMF detectors, to understand electromagnetism and to get tangible data, you have to have the frequency and the waveform. If you do not have those two things, you don't know what set the meter off. That's the problem with it. But that aside, I thought I would go over this because this is actually kind of have to John Madden some of it, though.
Do it up. You John Madden that. You John Madden that, Hitman.
Yeah, I figured you would say that. But one of the big things is, let's just take that all completely out. There are people that do know how to use a lot of these EMF meters. In fact, one of the jobs I had until it went out of business because it's not popular here in the United States was doing electromagnetic field surveys. For example, that monitor that Racer has in front of her, it kicks off an EMF field. And a lot of people say, well, if you're exposed to that for a long time, it can give you brain tumors and blah, blah, blah. Now, none of this has been really proven, especially in the United States, but in Europe, it's hot. If you're at work, we would have to have a shield over that monitor to prevent that electromagnetic field from hitting you. Wow. Now, when you're using, I'm going to use your phone, because it looks kind of like one of these Sperry digital meters, okay? or even a K2, or there's a lot of these instruments. Okay, now when you're using that, keep in mind a electromagnetic field is a three-dimensional thing, okay? So when you're using it and you see a guy use it, he'll find a reading, and then you'll see him start doing stuff like this. He'll turn it sideways, you see him move it up and down, he'll turn it this way. What he's doing is he's trying to lock onto the axis so he can pinpoint the point source of the EM field. Where's the EM field coming from? But if you watch one of these programs and you see people just doing this, what they've shown you is, I don't know how to use this instrument. You got to look for the movement. And it's one of the big things. And I want to show you a tricky thing. This electromagnetism crap, in case you haven't figured it out, it's tricky as hell. Give you an example here. Do a little blue line. That's a power line pole. You're looking down the line, okay? Now, the EM field coming off that thing is going to look kind of like that from the power line. Kind of like infinity symbol or a figure 8, on its side, okay? Now, one of the ways you can tell how accurate your instrument is, because, they do make some of these meters are calibrated. Stand underneath that power line, and you should get nothing because you're out of the field. However, if your meter is fluctuating even slightly, it's telling you it's not calibrated because there can be up to 22 subharmonics of that electromagnetic field at varying frequencies that do hit that area where you're at. Okay? So that's one example, but let's make it even more complex. Let's take two power lines running close to each other. Then we're going to have their own electromagnetic fields coming off, okay? All right. Granted, I'm John Maddening it, okay? It's going to be sloppy. But you see right here where these two fields meet? Mm-hmm. That can actually, because electromagnetic fields can react with each other and they can react with their environment. These two things can actually create another field. Oddly enough, it's called a phantom field as its nickname. Usually it can be anywhere from 18 to 30 hertz, depending. Once again, in these electromagnetic fields, they're dependent upon a lot of factors as well concerning the power line. But this one's kind of interesting. Let's say we had a house right here. There's my house. I'm on a building. Now, this building I'm talking about is La Placida Restaurant in Old Town.
Okay.
So, you're in there and you're walking around, right? Mm-hmm. Got the meter. Got a reading. Okay, so he starts. This is Bob doing this. Okay, Bob, by the way, is our co-host who has actually been trained in astrophysics. Went to New Mexico Tech, and he's like, "Dude, this is really weird." Thing is, he had the reading, he had the field right here, but assumed it was coming from the lights. He went up to try to chase it to its source. Vanishes. Okay, maybe it's coming from the floor. Goes down, vanishes. Okay, maybe it's coming from the wall over there. Could be a bad piece of wiring or something. If he moved off either direction more than a foot, he lost the field. Same thing this way. It looked like he's looking at a spear of electromagnetic energy. And I can guarantee you 98% of the ghost hunters out there would say, oh, this is paranormal. And we'll start backing off taking pictures. That's not. What he was
And get
actually
orbs.
reading was the bottom of that dipole. That actual EMF field.
And that's called a phantom field?
That's the nickname for it.
Okay.
It's a subharmonic.
Right.
Now now you can get even trickier than that. There was one place we investigated, and just to get how complicated it is. The electromagnetic field coming off was hitting the side of the house because the power line was right across the street. Now inside the house, what they did is they would put up in the old days when they did stucco, it looked kind of like chicken wire, but they'd sit and they'd nail that up, and then they would use that so that it kind of held the stucco on. Well, the field hits that, and it basically turned that thing into a giant frickin' antenna, which amplified the field. But it only happened when the lights were turned on, because we needed the extra power coming from the lines in there for the fields to interact to create the phantom field. Okay? So, my point is, this gets extremely complicated. Electromagnetic field theory is a bitch. It goes into vectors. You got to know calculus. I mean, it is hard. It confuses. It's probably one of the most hardest things to understand in physics if you actually take it in a college course. But the thing that I've never figured out about these EMF meters that people use is that the vast majority of them are AC, electromagnetic field meters.
Mm-hmm.
Alternating current. Alternating current, predominantly a man-made phenomenon. In nature, electromagnetic fields are DC, direct current. They flow from a point source outwards. They do not sit here and go back and forth. Which is great if you think that ghosts are a man-made phenomenon, but I mean, people are going to come up to you and go, okay, I got a problem with that, Holmes. What about these ghost stories that existed before we invented modern electricity? You know? So, yeah. The whole thing is it's very complicated. So, yeah. We need to get away from the old methods, man. That stuff isn't working. There's the parapsychology.
You want this one?
Yeah.
All right, another comment on here from Justin Quiggle. Parapsychology needs to be offered at more colleges and for actual credit towards a degree field. I do agree that any idiot can get a few kids together and bring no professionalism, which sheds a bad light on those of us who are serious about our work.
Okay, parapsychology is not serious anymore. There is no accredited college. There's another comment, and he's saying, oh, you ought to go to these. No, they do not offer accredited courses. Nobody does. Parapsychology shot itself in the foot. One, very bad research techniques. I already talked about how in societies they argued and fought with each other. Parapsychology is not considered to be a viable scientific endeavor anymore. And yes, they snicker at parapsychology just like they do ghost hunters nowadays. Don't think that's the promised land. It's not. They had their time in the sun. I mean, when they came along in the 70s, they were accepted. Because it was basically a branch of psychology. So people were more accepting of it. Totally. Nothing has been proven to exist. When you count their negatives, their negative results, compared to their positive results are happening by chance.
Mm-hmm.
It's not some great discovery. No, parapsychology isn't the way, so don't think it is. But there is one guy, he's talking about, is that him? No, I think I cut it off too soon. Yeah, I did. There's one gentleman in there that was talking about we have no academic basis. And that's where we go wrong. There's not a ghost hunting college or a ghost hunting school that's legitimate. Once again, I say there is. For example, I'm not saying with these electromagnetic field meters that electromagnetism isn't a possibility. It sure damn is. In fact, there's a lot of things that point that might be legit. But you need the proper instrumentation. You probably need a spectrum analyzer, not an EMF meter. But, you know, one of the big things with that is there is a specific academic type of thing you can do, which is with electromagnetism, a degree in physics. That's what your proper training would be. You know, so yeah, the professionalism isn't there. And there's great groups out there. Don't get me wrong, man. I wanted to do a good peer review. There's a group out of southern Wisconsin which is generating some interesting results, and they're actually measuring geomagnetic fields and correlating that to paranormal activity. Useful information for anybody. You know, if they put into a database, these guys will really add a lot. People got to get over their own belief systems, and they need to get back to scientific method. And this is one thing ghost hunters are not doing. They're not fully utilizing a scientific method. Typey, are you ready to do your news? Because I think this cracked.com article. Okay, let me get your thing loaded here. Alright. Okay, here we go. Hang on.
Welcome to Post-Mortem, the latest paranormal news with Racer.
There's an orb, what we call an orb. There's nothing come right across the other bed and just kind of disappear right at the camera.
You're going to see the shape around the corner which resembles a face.
Oh, pardon me, that's your ass.
We have to dig from here so as not to be seen. Come on, peaches.
Alright, guys, we have an article here from cracked.com. The paranormal relates to any unexplained incidents lacking a scientific explanation. Paranormal research is the attempt to explain these incidents with tools used to find evidence, or at least used to pretend to find evidence. Just the facts. 1. All paranormal research is subjective, which is to say it's prone to misreporting even when it's not intended. 2. Science relies on the ability for anyone to follow the procedure and then in turn get the same results, provided they did it right. Yet this isn't so with paranormal research. The results seem to differ depending on who's doing it. 3. Paranormal research, big business. Fools will buy anything. 4. The difference between ghost hunters and swindlers are slight. Swindlers don't talk about ghosts. What is it? Paranormal research is much like trying to figure out who in the room farted. It relies mostly on the 5 senses. Yet anyone who's been in this situation knows that people can lie, and the only way to really prove it is to make a fart detecting machine. Paranormal research, you just talked about farts, that's why you liked it. Paranormal researchers have adopted this idea. So they use many tools in an attempt to explain all the things they are seeing, feeling, and etc. Some look silly, some don't, but some of them have definitive answers in explaining the paranormal. For many skeptics believe they can be tampered with, along with the evidence. Nonetheless, ghost hunters often rely on EVPs, or electronic voice phenomenon, which is said to be the voices of ghosts talking in a frequency that we normally can't hear, except apparently when they, the ghosts, want you to. They are picked up by a simple recording device, and the sound quality of these EVPs is always crappy at best, and if anything, is a result of what fancy doctors call, I can never say that word. Well, apnea or pareidolia. Did I say those correctly?
Pretty close.
Okay, pretty close. The power of suggestion is very strong, my friend. So that noise on your digital recorder, there is probably just that, just a noise. And no, it isn't a voice saying, I want you. It's just not the case, just as it wasn't when your girlfriend used to say it either. EMF, or electromagnetic fields, are what research and ghost hunters alike feel that ghosts give off when they are around. It is in these electromagnetic fields, they say, explain some of the experiences people associate with ghosts, like goosebumps and hair standing on its end. The only problem with that is that the electromagnetic fields are everywhere. They come from TVs, electronics, everything, including the cameras and gear ghost hunters use, and even when the location may have no running electricity, it can still happen naturally. Heat signatures are sudden drops in temperatures. It is believed that these cold spots are really ghosts, and with the help of infrared temperature guns, many try to measure sudden drops in temperature, and some even claim to have infrared video of ghosts walking around doing their thing. Yet these two can obviously be faked, furthering the notion that all ghost hunters are full of shit. If ghosts do exist and can be seen with infrared technology, then surely the Predator would have been the best ghost hunter ever. That's very true.
Yeah.
Psychics who are ghost hunters. What the guy who distracts you is to the purse snatcher. Conning people is much easier in teams, and psychics are good at being vague. and searching for answers without actually saying it. They are masters at bullshitting, making them a perfect match for ghost hunters in this way that they manage to fool people using suggestions, gray areas, and their own gullibility to convince people they aren't phonies. Charles Fort, the first paranormal researchers. Paranormal research has been around as long as man has had the belief in afterlife, and although some dorkwads like to claim there is a distinct difference between paranormal researchers and ghost hunters, the differences between these two are slight, differing only in that ghost hunters seem to be more theatrical. Charles Fort, however, is regarded as one of the first well-known paranormal researchers in America, which is to say that he was one of the first guys to hear voices and blame them on dead people, and not God or the devil, excessive drinking, or just plain insanity. He lived in the late 1800s and wrote several books about his investigations, namely The Book of the Damned. If you were to pick this up and read its back, you would think you just picked up a hefty book of fantasy. But oh no, you would be wrong. For although it is a book about giants, fairies, aliens, poltergeists, and UFOs, Fort claims that all the things in his books are true, and his evidence for all of that batshit crazy exclamations too. Aside from all the lying, he also takes a poke or two at the science community, starting at a long feud, which still goes on today, in a sort of bitch fight, in which the winner will still a bitch in the still... That doesn't even make sense. Starting over. In a sort of bitch fight in which the winner is still a bitch in the eyes of the sports jocks and pretty much everyone else everywhere. Yes, Charles Fort is one of America's swindlers. Harry Price, the first ghost hunter. Harry Price, however, was a different kind of swindler. With an expertise in magic, he differs from Fort in that he sought out what was supposed to be haunted homes and tried to document the footsteps and the voices he heard. The very same thing ghost hunters try to do today. He made a name for himself by exposing the other psychics and ghost photographers as fake, which, as a magician, he of all people should know is a big no-no. He must have had enormous balls, because after this, he himself got into the game of conning people with machines he made himself for apparently inside from being a boastful magician and swindler. He was also an inventor. He used these machines and tools during seances and tours of haunted homes, and apparently everyone believed him. Today he is regarded as one of the first ghost hunters, many con men with fancy gadgets. Take a breath there. The trendsetter, Mr. Harry Price, and one of his many ghost detecting machines, which were so secret and bullshit that no one knew how they worked, except for Mr. Price, of course. What followed was many years of other ghost hunters making their own inventions to help find ghosts. You know, like glasses that help you see ghosts. The Fox Sisters. Then, of course, there's the Fox Sisters, who we at Cracked.com already covered extensively in an article titled The 5 Ballsiest Con Artists of All Times by Christy Harrison. The article can be found here. As its title suggests, they were a couple of swindlers who put seances on that were total bullshit. TAPS, the Atlantic Paranormal Society. Today, ghost hunters are more advanced, and some are even popular enough to bring in enough audience for a show, like these guys Jason Hawes and Grant Wilson. TAPS, or the Atlantic Paranormal Society, in the words of Dead Bastard, is so big that they actually have groups in many of the 50 United States, and even an international team which follows ghosts abroad. Its goal is to unite paranormal researchers within the family, so that they may share and provide further insight on any evidence gathered by team members. The faces of this group are 2 plumbers. That's right. Whoops. The same guys who snaked all the shit out of your main line and were rude and started charging you the second they got out of the car. Just so happened to be ghost hunters on the side. In 1990 they founded the group, and what followed was years of hawking ghost crap at unsuspecting fools, and even releasing a couple of books, Ghost Hunting and Seeking Spirits. They also have their own bullshit magazine. Like any good show, the TAPS team sought out ratings, and aside from their usual shows, they too have done a series of live specials, which are done perhaps in an attempt to disprove any notions that the film could be tampered with in post-production. But it is more than likely that this is done in an attempt to prove that they are not phonies, and in doing so they prove that they are in fact totally full of shit. Some fans of the show feel that they have been lied to, and that they've been swindled, and in this case, they're right. Ghost Adventures. All the other ghost hunters compared to these guys are total pussies. The Ghost Adventure Squad, made up of Zach Bagans, I don't even know, Nick Groff, and Aaron Goodwin. They, like most ghost hunters, go into haunted locations, but unlike others, they have the balls to actually taunt the ghost. Zach actually believes he can put these ghosts in their place, and a part of him believes that he can scare the ghosts, and if he can't do it with his muscles or stern voice, then surely his affliction shirts will do the job. As hinted in the intro to their show, these guys will do anything to get a reaction from ghosts, to see a ghost, or to prove their existence. They'll taunt ghosts, call them murderers, insult them, even go as far as to advise them to feed off their own energy so that they may show themselves. Needless to say, these guys from Las Vegas are pretty badass, but we can only assume that that's because they are indeed from Vegas, which means that they've seen their fair share of some scary, horrible shit. No doubt that daily living in Vegas is scary enough. Lives crushed in the search of the almighty dollar, of the next big spin, the living dead sucking carelessly on cigarettes. Have you ever seen what time does to an old woman's skin in Las Vegas? There is something about all the dry heat from that rotten desert, or perhaps all the time under the Las Vegas lights that can melt your skin to look like wax. The Ghost Adventures team have done their own live show, which appeared on Halloween just last year. It says 2009, so this was 2000, I don't know. They, like Tap's team, are resorted to gimmicks, as they brought in guest ghost hunters, including the ones that came in with a machine of his own invention, as always, through which ghosts could talk to them in real time. They, of course, proceeded to have a chat with all the ghosts around them. They also brought in another man who claimed to have a ghost-catching box, which was really just a Tesla coil inside a plexiglass box. It pulsated and made a noise like a giant bug zapper, and every second a giant bug seemed to be flying into it. Then came the incident, when the guest ghost hunter was walking around the box and his EMF meter shot straight out of his hand as if it was done by a ghost. Many viewers called this bullshit, and it does appear that he throws it, and called him a phony, as if they somehow, being the owner and creator of an actual ghost-catching box, wasn't ludicrous enough for them. So in summation, are ghosts or ghost hunters real? It ain't looking good, kid. It ain't looking good. History has shown that 99% of all paranormal researchers and ghost hunters have been proven to be totally full of shit. If you Google and search paranormal research, you'll find a whole list of paranormal research societies. So there's no way that many people could be wrong, right? Wrong. History has shown that people are stupid, and when assembled in groups, are downright retarded. If you happen to venture on these websites, you'll find that many of these societies sell ghost hunter gear at really high prices, which may show the true purpose of these ghost hunting groups, to make money off your stupidity. It is a genius idea, I suppose. Stupid is really popular these days.
There you go. And keep in mind, crack.com is a humor. It's a parody site. This is how they're taking ghost hunting, and this is kind of how the public's starting to turn towards ghost hunting. They're looking at it this way. Are you ready for your...
Yes.
I just hear that name and I shudder.
Nigger bitch!
Do it again.
Nigger bitch!
Dumb bitch. Did you call me? What? I'm sorry, I heard dumb bitch. I assume you were speaking to me.
No, I'm talking to her!
Your name is dumb bitch too? No wonder I've been getting all your mail. Do you think we could be related? Because there are a lot of us dumb bitches.
Alright, this article that I got, you'll actually want to go to the video portion for this too, because we have some images for you. But it's from a website and it's www.cbc.ca, so it's from Montreal, Canada. I wish I had an author to quote on this. Dan Halton reports. Haunted church ravaged by ghost hunters. A 190-year-old church in Quebec has become the target of ghost hunters amid rumors of the building being haunted. The 19th century St. John's Anglican Church in Gore, Quebec, has been plagued by unwelcome visitors of late, and both the church's warden and the Anglican diocese are considering abandoning it. Some of those breaking in are simply vandals, but others are doing more than just mischief. Spectre-seeking late-night crowds have begun congregating in the church after rumors it was haunted started to spread online. Rumors were started on chat sites that at one time the church's congregation committed a mass suicide. Although the stories have no basis in fact, they soon had a supernatural thrill-seekers and ghost hunters breaking into the church at night. They've been performing seances on the grounds trying to conjure up the spirits of the dead. In the process, the ghost hunters are despoiling one of the few remnants of the 19th century village of the Shrewsbury, a Scottish and Irish settlement founded in the 1820s. The village, located within the modern-day municipality of Gore, disappeared over the last century because of disease and lack of fertile soil. Jim Kyle, the church's warden, says almost every week another tombstone is desecrated or another peach of the church is defaced. It sickens me to know that there are people out there with so little to do with their lives that this is what they take pleasure in, Kyle said. Kyle's grandmother once played the organ at St. John's, but now it lies in ruins, along with the church's original furniture. They think that if they do this, they'll anger the ghosts and the ghosts will come out, Kyle said. The Anglican Diocese is preparing to deconsecrate St. John's Church, putting an end to the angelical services altogether. It's sad, and it feels like in a sense we've got defeated. We've had to give up after almost 200 years, said Super Archdeacon Edward Simonton, a rector in Rodin, Quebec. But the community of Gore hasn't lost all hope. The community plans to apply for provincial funding to restore St. John's as a non-denominational church where people can still hold baptisms and weddings. Gore is about an hour's drive north of Montreal, and the church was built in 1858.
Why can't we get along? Because people...
This is the thing that makes me want to give a big middle finger to the lady that wrote this article, because you have shit like this going on.
Yeah.
Giving ghost hunters a bad name.
See, people... If you guys don't understand why ghost hunters don't get along, there are a lot of asshats. A lot of them we actually have done peer reviews on just to show that, yes, this crap's happening. And here you have this beautiful historic church vandalized by people who no doubt were probably watching either Extreme Paranormal or Ghost Adventures, thinking that by trashing this church, they're going to get the spirits to come out.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But, yeah. Oh, man. Kind of bad. But that's the way it goes.
Makes me sad. Me too.
Yeah, don't... the bottom line of this, here's my solution for you. You guys want to actually do something. It's very easy. And here it is. Number 1, in your mission statement, state what form of the scientific method you're using. There's a lot. Controlled experiment, statistical research, whatever it is you're doing, put it in your mission statement. Number 2, stop using the word evidence, because it's not. Number 3, if you're honestly a ghost investigator, or you're a researcher, you should be doing some kind of testing because, well, hey, we haven't proven these ghost things exist yet. If you do research, publish it. That's the measure of a good group. They publish research. We put all ours out there, and we put it out there the way we do it. We publish the research, so you can, hey, they don't think ghost dowsing rods work. Why? Okay, here's our results.
Right.
AC EMF meters don't detect ghosts, and AC fields do not induce hallucinations. How do we know? That's not something that I believe. We've tested it under a controlled experiment, published our results. They're out there on the internet for everybody. One of the cool things, and not to go back to my book again, but one of the cool things, you can use this science and you can still keep it fun and entertaining for everybody, and you can actually progress the field of paranormal. For example, one of the things that's come up is the ghost box. You've heard of this, the box that locks on.
Box.
Okay, I personally think it's full of shit, but that's only my opinion. We're going to buy one, and we're going to test it via a controlled experiment to see if it works. That's the way we discover and we learn and we push this thing forward. Start using science. Get away from the old crap. Keep in mind that the shows are entertainment, which means they're crap as far as the real deal goes. And we'll all get together. For all these groups out there that are wanting their own TV show, the ratings of these things are going down. In fact, there are no present ideas out there for new pilots. I know this because I know a guy that is very involved in the TV world. None of the networks are looking for ghost shows anymore. We lost Ghost Labs. Ghost Labs is gone. Next up, you got Taps, and you have Ghost Adventures.
Mm-hmm.
Their lives are limited on the networks. They're not going to be around too much longer. When you got Cracked.com, a parody site making fun of ghost hunting, and people don't understand why, well, now you know why I wrote that book. Anyway. Yeah.